Admin panel is one of the most important part of an e-commerce. So entities like categories, subcategory and products can be newly added, edited and can be removed from the admin panel. So it is very necessary to build an admin panel for an e-commerce application. So in this video, we are going to build an admin panel for our e-commerce application, which we are building in this video series. Hey everyone, this is Kamran and I'm a full stack web developer, and in this series of videos I'm building an e-commerce, and in this video we will be building an admin panel and we will be learning how different components can be used in a single component. If you are new here, I would suggest you to hit the subscribe button. So now let's talk about admin panels. So basically admin panel will consist of three different components. First will be the header of the admin panel, and we will create a sidebar in which we are going to give links to different pages. Then we are going to have a main section where we are going to render our sessions. So each section will contain the CRUD operation on each of the entities. So entities which we will cover in this video will be categories, subcategories and products. So now let's get started. So let's start with a basic creating components for our admin module. As we have already created different modules for each of type of users, so we have created this admin module in the module section. So now in the admin panel will be built inside this module. So in this admin folder, I'm going to create a new folder named as components. And in this components folder, I'm going to place all my components. So the first components which we are going to create is our header. So let's create that. So for creating a component, we are going to use the same command which we are using in our previous video. I'm going to generate a new component using ng command. So here I'm just going to give modules slash admin. So path of the components will be modules slash admin slash components. And in this components, we are going to have a header. So this header will be specific to admin panel. That's why I'm creating this inside this admin components. So now our header component is created. Let's do some coding inside this component. So in our header components, you can see header works is present. So let's first import this inside our main component. So this is our HTML component where we have to first import this, right? So let's do that. So app admin, in this I'm going to add our app header. So app header, and here everything will be displayed. So let's talk about how we are going to build a header. So we have some basic properties of a header in mind, which we will be using to build the header of our application. So the first property which we should have is the header should be stuck at the top of our window. So let's start with that. So for now, I'm just going to add e-commerce over here. So you can replace this with the name of your e-commerce application. So now I'm going to add some class over here, and class will be header. And I'm going to add some properties to this header. So header should always be at the top of the window. So for that, I'm going to make the position of this header as fixed. So it should be fixed at top, right? So I'm going to say it should be fixed and top should be 0. So here you have to add left as a 0. So here you have to make sure that header should be stretched to 100% of the width. So I'm going to add a width as 100%. So I'm going to add the background color for this header. So let's make it black for now. So I will start building the whole application in a dark theme. So that's why I'm doing it as a black for now. And inside this, we are going to add a new class, which will be app name. So this app name, I'm going to again add in this. So in this, I'm going to add a color as white. So it should be visible on the black background. So before seeing the output on the view, I'm going to make a small change in the app routing. So instead of making the user as a default module, I'm going to make the admin as a default module. So every time when it will be reloaded, it will redirected to the admin module only. Before checking the output, let's see our HTML file. I will just remove this app admin and we'll just keep the header. And now let's see the output on the web browser. So on the output, you can see that our e-commerce header is here. So let's add some padding to this title so that it will increase the height of the header. So for that, I will add some padding in this. So let's add a padding of 10 pixels. Now you can see a perfect header over here. You can also add some box shadow in the header to give it some 3D feel. And now let's create a sidebar for this application. So for that, first I'm going to create a new component similar to header. I'm going to create a sidebar. So running the same command with sidebar to create the sidebar component. So now I will close this header component and open the sidebar components. Let's close this, and in the admin module we will have components, and components will have a sidebar. So now let's discuss the basic property of a sidebar. So sidebar should stuck to the left hand side of the screen with the width of almost 20-25%. So let's do that. So now I will add a new div over here whose class will be sidebar, and we will add some CSS in this sidebar class. And before that I will just add a text over here as sidebar. So sidebar will also be a fixed position CSS. So I will add a position as fixed, and this will stick to the left hand side, right? So left will be 0, 0. And in this also, like, we can give top as 0 as well, and its width will be 20% or 25%, whatever you want to keep it, you can keep it. I will keep 20%, and then I will give a background to this as well, and we will keep the background as black for this one as well. In one of the upcoming videos, when we will be working with the theme of the application, we will change this black color to some theme color. And here we have to add a height to the sidebar as well, which will be 100 VH. VH is the height of the window. Once we have added the CSS to this sidebar, so we will add the sidebar in our admin component. So just like app header, we are going to add the app sidebar. And now let's take a look on the output. So here we can see we have added the sidebar. But in sidebar we can't see the text, so I will add this font color for this text as white. And you have to remember that you have to put the header on top of the sidebar. So we will add some z index to the header, which will be greater to the sidebar. So now we have our two components ready, sidebar and the header. So now we are going to add some content in our sidebar. So for that, first let's talk about what we have to add in our sidebar. So sidebar will contain the list of all the entities which we are going to edit or modify in our admin panel. So for that we have to make the list, right? So first we will have a list of components. So now I will just close this admin and header everything. Just a sidebar will be there. So now let's create a variable name as sidebar list, which will contain all the list of the entities which we are going to edit, right? So that will type will be any, and it will be an array, and in this array each item will be an object in which we are going to add some properties. So first will be the name, or we can call it as label. So label will be the label of that particular item. So first I'm going to add a category. So category, and then we are going to have a link for this category, and link we will add once we add this category component, and we also create a route for this category component. We will do this as a next step. First let's complete this. So just like categories, I'm going to add subcategory and product. Now let's show this list on the HTML. So in the HTML, we are going to use ng for this, and I'm going to add a new div for this. And in this div, I'm going to use ng for. So ng for, and this will be let item of, and this will be item dot label, as we have to show the label over here, right? So let's see the output right now. So here you can see we can only see product because the category and subcategory are hidden inside this header. So to avoid that, we are going to add some CSS in the sidebar that will be padding top, and top will be padded with 100 pixels. And inside that, I'm going to add a new CSS which will be sidebar item. And inside this sidebar item also, like, we will have this padding of 10 pixel for each of the components. So let's add this class in the div. So I will just copy this and I will paste this inside this class. So now you can see the output is bit different. So now we should make sure that we should highlight the entity which is active currently. So for that, I'm going to introduce a new key to the object of this items, which will be active, and it will be true or false based on the current activeness of that item. And I will decrease that 100 pixels as well. So first let's decrease this. Now let's create a new class which will be sidebar item active, and this will show the active item of the sidebar. And if how we can differentiate between the active and inactive, we can add a background color for this. So this will be background color, and we can add some gray background for this one. And for this then we have to add the color as black again. Now we have to use the class of the sidebar based on the uh, activeness of that item. So let for that I will add a new key in this, which will be active, and by default category will be active and rest of the things will be inactive. Now I will update this class name based on the activeness of this item, right? So for this I'm going to use a new directive which will be ng class, and in ng class you can pass a class to a div or an element with depending on a condition. So I'm going to use that, and this I'm going to pass an object which will be true or false based on the element. And in this first I have to pass the class name, and as the value of this key I will pass the condition or the variable whose value will define the condition. Same I have to give for the active as well. So for active, so if it is active then we have to show the sidebar item active, and if it is not true then we have to pass the sidebar item. So now you can see that the category is currently active. So now we have to create a mechanism in which if I click on any other item, it should get active. So let's do that. So for that in the TS file, I'm going to create a new function which will change the route. So I will change route, and in this I'm going to pass index as a parameter which I will be using to make the particular item active. So first I'm going to make all the item inactive, and then I'm going to make the index number active. So let's do that. For that first I'm going to use a for each, and in for each I'm going to use this dot sidebar list, and in this I'm going to make all the items as inactive. So let's do that. So for that I'm going to do a loop on the sidebar list and make everything inactive first, and then I'm simply going to say that make the index one as a true, and that's it. And this I'm going to call it from the each element. So let's call that from here. So here I'm going to add a click event, and here I'm going to pass that function. So this dot change route, and in that we have to pass the index as well. So I'm going to pass that, and to pass that I have to add an index in this loop. So I'm going to do that, let I equals to index. So our I will be the index, and that I will be passing to this change route. And one small CSS which we have to add in the items is that we have to make this as a cursor pointer. So now if I click on any other item in the list, that particular item will get active. So now we have created the sidebar. Now we'll create some actual components to be displayed inside this main area. So we are going to create components for each of this category, subcategory and product. So let's do that. And to differentiate between this category and the user category, we are going to append admin to each of the components. So let's do that. So here first I'm going to create a component for the category. So let's name it as admin category. And similarly, I'm going to create subcategory and product. So now let's first add these categories in our route. So let's close this for now and then open our admin route. So if we open the admin component, you can see here these three components have been imported over here by default. So same you have to import in the admin routing panel. So these components will be added as a sub route of this main path. So let's do that. We have already did this in the user admin, which we have done in previous video. You can check that out as well. So now we have defined all the paths for each of the components. Let's try to render this in our main component. So let's open this our main component HTML. So here we have app header and app sidebar. So we are going to add a new div for here, and this we are going to add a class as main. And here we are going to pass our router output, which will be the router outlet. So in this main div, we are going to render our output. So let's add some CSS to this main. As we have sidebar and header, we have to add some padding to this div. So let's do that. So padding top will be around 50 pixels, which is the header height. And from the side also we have to add some padding. So we'll do that. So padding left will be 20 VH, which is the width of the sidebar. And also we can add the width to this, which is 80. And along with this, what we can do, we can add routes to the sidebar. So if you open the sidebar, you can see that we have this link, right? So in this link, we have to pass the route path. So let's do that. So this will be category and this will be subcategory. And now we have this product. So we have added this link and we have to add a router link to make that switch, right? So let's do that as well. So here I'm going to say a router link. So if you don't know how router link works, I have already created a separate video on routing. So you can watch that. And in this, I'm going to pass item.link. So here we have added 50 VH, right? So just do this as a 20 V. So instead of 20% of width, we are going to add 20 VW, which is almost similar to 20%. So you can use VW. I'm going to use that, and I'm just going to update that main component CS as well. I think I have added VH. Okay, so here we have to use VW, not VH. VH stands for the height and this is width. So we have to use the VW. So here you can see for the category, admin category works has been displayed. Let's click on subcategory. Admin subcategory works and admin product works. So this is working fine now. So we can switch between the categories and we can go to particular route and see the particular component using this sidebar now. So now first step is done. So now let's get into the category components and create the sub components for this component. So what are the functionalities do we want in each of the entity? So for category, we are going to create CRUD operations on the category. So CRUD operations will include creating a new category, reading the list of the categories from the backend. We have this update, in which we are going to update the values or the property of a category. And then we are going to delete the category using D. So that is our CRUD, and that we are going to do that. So the first step which we are going to do is the showing the list of the category, right? So showing the list of the category, we will use a table. So as in the Express.js series, we have already created APIs for getting the list of the category, updating it and deleting it and adding a new category. We are going to use the same APIs. So let's first see the list. So for that, I'm going to create a table. So I'm going to import some external table packages and use that tables. And the best which I can think of to show the small kind of data is to use the Angular material table. And for that, we have to import the whole Angular material package. So you have to keep in mind that these material design or any other design packages make your whole application heavy. So you have to think about it. If you really need this package, then only you install it. So I'm going to install the Angular material, which is an inbuilt material package for Angular framework. So let's do that. So I will add this link where you can get to install the Angular material in an application. So to add that, you have to use simple command of ng add Angular material. So here let's clear up the command prompt and add this one. So this will add everything which will require to use material design in your application. And from this design, I'm going to use table to show the list of the categories in your application. So while installing this Angular material, it will ask you some basic questions, just as how what theme you want to use, and if you want the Angular typography or animation or not. So I have chosen yes for everything because we are going to use each and everything in later videos. So you can also say yes to it and have a hands on each of and everything. So now we have installed our Angular material. Now let's see how we can use Angular material table in our application. So for that, I'm going to go to the components over here, and in this components, once you scroll down, you will see the table, right? So you can use that. So table, yeah. So table, if you open it, you will see an example over here, and clicking on this view code, you will see the code. So you can just simply copy paste for now, and then later on we are going to make changes in this. So for the first, we have to open our category component. So in the module admin components category main, let's paste this. We have to add something in the CSS as well. So let's add that. So we have to add these interfaces and data in our TS file as well. So let's add that. And inside this also we have to add the data source and the column name. So let's do that. And in CSS also we have to add something. So just we have to add table as width 100. So let's add that as well. So table width 100 will have added. So now we have to update this data with our category data. For that, we are going to see how exactly our current category data looks like. As we have stored our category data in one of the text file right now in the backend, we will see how it looks in that. If you have seen my Express.js tutorial series, you'll see that we have stored this data in this form in the backend. So now let's add some property to this category. So we will use that to show up in our list. So instead of status, we can say is deleted. So this key we will use to maintain the delete of a category. So it should be 0 by default. So we will control the activeness, like we can just hide it or we can just deactivate a category using this file. And along with name, we will need a URL of the image for the category, right? So we will add that as well. And for now, we will add some random URL for this one. So URL, and in this one, we are going to add some random URL. So same goes for electronics as well. So I'm making these changes because I have to use this data. If you are using any other data, you can use or update that data. So let's update our table data according to this. So we have name, URL, ID, and we have is delete and is active. So let's update our data according to this. We can remove this element data as we are going to get this data from backend. So we'll just eliminate this and I will update this as empty object. And this we can put as any for now, or we can use this periodic element. Instead of periodic element, I'm going to create a new interface as category. So I'm going to update the keys for this as well. So now we have this interface. We can pass this interface in this. So I'm just going to pass this. Now I'm going to make an API call, get the data and update the data in this data source. So in the previous video in which I have created the landing page of an e-commerce, in that we have already used the get API. So we can use the same. So I'm going to use the same. So if you want to have a look, I will just open this, and in this I will show you the list of categories in the category. So here, if you see this here, I have already used and make the API call and use that data, right? So I can do that same in our admin category as well. So let's do that. So I'm just going to import our category service in this. So once you import that category service, you have to inject that just like our category component. So I'm just going to copy paste this category service, and I'm doing this because we have already done these things in the previous video. You can check that video out. So I can just copy paste the whole get category method in this one, and I'm going to call this get categories in this. So let's do that, and this value should be data source. It is better to name it as a categories because it defines that only. So but we have to update our table. First let's minimize this code, remove all the comment from here, and now let's update the data. So here displayed column is the list of columns, right? So we have to update this as well. So first will be id, name, url, and this will be is deleted, and we will also have is active, right? Add a new key as is active, and same we have to update in the html file as well. So in the html, for each column we have defined just like definition as id, and here you can give the label, and here you have to update the element, right? And you have to do the same with all the columns. So once I update this categories variable, you will see that the category is updated with this category. So in the output also you will see that the list of all the category is populated in the table. So we will add some padding to this table so that it should look more clearer. So here what we can do, we can wrap this table inside a div, and we can give some css to the div. So let's do that. So div will be this one, and in this I'm going to give this css as class as category, which I can use category, and this category I'm going to update in our css in dot category, and this will have some padding of 10 pixels. So you can move this table inside this category because we have this table inside this category, so we can do that. So now if we look at the table, you will see that this is added. So if you want to remove this box shadow, you can simply remove that class to the table and this will be removed, but it looks good, so I will keep it. So now we have the list of the category. Now we have to add a method to add a new category. And in order to create a new category, we are going to add a button at the top of this table, which will open a modal, and in modal we will have a form, and filling up the form and submitting the form will add a category in this. So let's do that. So for that, I'm going to use two components from the Angular material. The first is the button and the second one is the modal. So let's import both of them. So for button, I'm going to import the button module in this admin model and going to add this button module. Once I import this module, can use this button directly and just copy this button. And this I will add in our HTML. So HTML at the top, I can add this. I can wrap this button inside a div, and this will we say add new category, and we have to add an event for this. And on click of this button, we are going to open a modal. So let's add a method for that. Add modal and this method I'm going to define in our ATS file. So let's do that over here. So for this, first I'm going to add a modal in our application. So we are going to use this dialog for that. So in this, first we have to import the module. So let's do that. In the admin module, I'm going to import this dialog and add this in this array, same as others. And now I can close this out. So for this dialog, we have to create a new component. Let's do that. So I'm going to create a new component named as add category dialog. So let's create this. And once this is created, I will add the content of that dialog component into this. So let's add this dialog component in our new dialog component. So I'm going to replace this constructor over here, and these we have to import. So let's do that as well. And we have to import this inject from the core module. Let's do that. And we have to replace this dialog overview component with this component itself. And in our parent component, we have to add this open dialog content. So we'll do that. I will add this in our parent component. So here admin category is our parent component, and here I have to add this. So you have to add this names as well as this one, and just instantiate this as in Angular 14 you have to instantiate every variable. And let's import this component as well. So I'm going to import that. So import from add category dialog, add category component, and this component we have to import, and we have to pass this in this open function. So now let's see output on the GUI. So in the output you can see we have this button. On click of that, this dialog is opening. Now we have to add a form in this dialog. That is our next step. So for now we are going to add the input, and we are going to submit that input values to the API. And we are going to use the already existing add API which we built in the last Express.js video. So let's start making some changes. So first I'm going to import the mat input module so that we can use the input to in our application. So now once we have added the mat input, we are going to use this in our application. So we also have to import the form field module because we are going to use form field in our forms. So let's import that as well. Now once this is done, I can close it out. Now I have to add the form. So let's open our add category dialog, and inside this I'm going to add our form. So let's close on the other files and just open the HTML part. So here I will start adding the mat forms. So what first will be the mat form field, and inside this I will be using our mat label and mat input. So let's add mat label, and here I will say ID. We are going to pass the ID of the category, and then we will say input, and this will be a mat input. So I have to pass the input as a mat input. So we can pass some more inputs in this, as we can say we will have a placeholder that will be ID. So in this I'm going to use ng model to bind value to this input. So let's do that. So I'm gonna add ng, and its value will be ID. So we have to define ID over here. So by default ID will be number, and I will instantiate this with 0. And now we can see we have this error over here which says that ng model is not embedded. This means we have some missing dependencies. So we have to open our module, and here we have to import Angular forms. So let's do that. In this forms module I will import it in our array. So let's do that. Now you can see that error is gone. Similarly, I have to use name URL as well. So when we are going to add a category, the is deleted and is active will by default be 0, and rest of the things we have to give the input. So let's define this name and URL in the TS file as well. Let's do that. This will be a string, and by default should be an empty, and same goes for URL. So now you can see everything is green. That means everything is working. So if you see the model now, so here you can see that we have a basic form, but we just have to add a button to submit the value of this form. So let's add that as well. So here I'm gonna add the mat button again. So here I have to add few things. First, let's add a trigger for this button. So that will be add new category. So this method we can use to hit the API to add category in our database. So let's create this method in our TS file, and let's add some text in the button. We simply save, and that's it. This is the simplest form which we can create for now. In this I'm gonna call an API. And to call an API, we have to import this data service, and in that we are going to call that add category API. So I'm gonna just copy paste the method, and I'm gonna replace this get category with add category, and here I have to pass the data, right? So data I'm gonna pass. So first will be ID. We don't have these categories over here, so just I will remove this. So when we are going to get a success response, I'm going to empty the whole form. So I just have to set the ID to 0, and we have to clear up both name and URL. So let's do that. So whenever we are going to hit this add new category, this API will be called, and we are going to pass this data which will be added in the database in the backend. So let's try this out. So here, so before hitting this, I want to add some CSS to this category button as well. So let's add a class to this and add some CSS to this. So on the output, you can see we have this button now on left floating to the right. So before testing out this function or this API, let's check the how we are making an API call. So this data is directly passed. Instead of this, what we have to do, we have to pass this in this category, because this is what we expect on the backend side. So you have to check your backend as well, what exactly is expected, and for both the put and post, this is expected. So let's replace this put as well. So once I click add, I will get a form, and in this form I can add ID as 5, name as furniture, and image I can add any URL. You can also add any URL you want for now. So now I can hit this save, which will add this electronics in this one. So let's do a refresh over here. So you can see here furniture is added to the list. Now we have added this functionality to add any category. So now let's add a functionality to edit any of these entries. So let's do that. For that, what we are going to do, we are going to add a new column which will say edit, and on click of that column we will get a pop-up in which we are going to get the current data, and we can edit that as well. So for that, I'm going to add a new dialog. So first I'm going to create a exact replica of this add category dialog, and I will create a new component for this edit category dialog. So let's do that. And in this edit category dialog also, we are going to add the same content which we have in our add category direct, but instead of adding the data from there, we are going to get the data of each row in this form, and then we are going to update that value. So in this add category dialog, we are not using this data, so we can remove that. So let's remove it first, and here I can remove this, and I also can remove this interface which we are not using. And in this one, what we are going to do, we are going to update this value of this dialog data. So instead of dialog data, I can say edit category data, right? Edit category data, and this edit category data I can pass in this data, because I'm going to get this data from outside. So I'm gonna pass this data as in a mat dialog data, and then I'm gonna update my values by default. So my this dot id will be data dot id, sorry, this dot data dot id, and it will be same for the name and URL. This is showing red because we haven't added this into the interface. So let's add that into interface. So URL is done, and this will be a number. So let's add a number for ID. So I've added is deleted and is active as well. So let's update everything from the data. So now I would edit this to as well as a variable, but I have to add this in the add category as well. This will not be editable in the add field, but it should be editable in the edit field. So let's do that. So for that, I have to add 2 more new inputs in the HTML. So let's do that. So what we are going to do, we are going to get the data from the parent. So we have to pass the data of the row into this dialog. So let's do that. So once we go into the parent component, first I have to add a new column for editing. So let's do that first. This is edit, and in HTML as well I will add that. So I will add a new column over here, edit, and its label will be I edit only. For this column I just can simply add edit, so this will show edit, and once we click on this, it will pop up that. So for that I have to add a new function over here, right? So let's make a duplicate function for open edit model. So this will be open edit model, and this model I have to pass here. So let's do that. So this will be click, and on click we will call this function. And what we have to do, we have to pass index over here, right? So in order to get the index, what we will do, we will say here let I equals to index, and this will give us the index. So we have to pass the index from here. So now in the function definition, we have to get an index over here, which will be a number. So here we have to pass the particular category, right? So I will do categories and I will pass the index over here. This will pass the that particular category. So this we can remove, we don't use this, so we can remove it from here as well. And also from here we are not passing the data in add model, so we can remove that, and with that we can remove this too also. We have to import that and use that as an edit model, right? So let's do that. So here if I can get edit model components, and this will be dialog component. So this I'm gonna pass in this parameter. This looks good to me. Let's try it out. So this, if I want to edit this particular row, then I'm going to click on this, and so I'm gonna get the detail in the form and I can edit it. Before hitting save, I'm gonna check the which API we are calling. So I will close this admin category from here. We don't need that now. And from here I'm calling add new. Instead of that I have to call a new method edit, right? Rename this, and this we will call from the form button, and here also we have to call edit, not this. So let's check if we have edit method already defined. Update, we have update, so we can use that. So update, and here we have to again pass both is active and is deleted. So now we can try for this. So let's update this as well. So resetting the form is also needed, so we will reset is active and is deleted. So now let's try it out. So once I open this furniture, here deleted is 0, active is 1, furniture is will be furnitures. And so if I save it and close it, and if I do a refresh, I can see that the name of the category is updated. So now instead of closing and refreshing the window, instead of that, what we can do, we will call the get API again on close of that modal. And now we can do that by using the close callback. So in the parent component, you can see we have this callback after closed, right? So in this we can call this get category. So let's do that. So if I call this after this, so whenever I'm going to close this, this will be called. And one more thing which we can add is whenever we are saving the form, we can just simply close this form as well. So to do that, we are going to use the dialog reference. So dialog reference is itself reference. So what we can do, this dot dialog ref dot, we can use close method to close the dialog. I can do the same in the add the category function as well. So now let's try from a fresh. So if I click on add, and if I add a new ID and a name, toys, and here I can add any image. Once I add this modal will be closed and it will be refreshed and the list will be added in here. Same goes for edit. So if I want to edit it, I will just go here and I will update active and say save. So it will be updated in the list. So here you saw how we can create and CRUD operation of in any category. Like we can create a new category from this panel, and we can see the list of the panel. We can update the data in any category in from this panel, right? So if you want to delete something, you can just simply open it and you can turn this deleted as 1, and we will see once you save it, this deleted will be turned 1 and this will be deleted. So whenever you are going to get the list, you will just ignore this deleted as 1. So this is called a soft delete. So instead of removing the entry directly from the GUI, we just take a flag and convert it to 1 to avoid this flag whenever we are considering the list of the categories. And similarly, you can create the same for the subcategory and product. There will be not a single change. So you can do that by yourself. That's a homework for you. So I hope this video helped you to understand how you can create a basic admin panel in an e-commerce application. We are going to make an advanced features in this admin panel later on in this series of videos. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I would suggest you to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and share this video with every developer who wants to learn mean stack development. So happy coding everyone. See you in the next video.